I never imagined I would one day sit at my own kitchen table and rehearse the words, "I'm dying." But there I was. The house was too quiet that morning. It had been quiet for 2 years, ever since Daniel passed away, but that day the silence felt heavier, like it was watching me, waiting to see what I would do next. In front of me lay a printed statement. Numbers I had checked at least 10 times already, as if they might disappear if I blinked too long. $3.1 million. Daniel had always been careful with money, careful to the point of obsession. While I lived beside him for decades, I never fully understood just how much he had built, saved, and hidden away for security. After his death, the lawyers revealed everything: accounts, investments, funds I had never even heard him mention. And I told no one, not even my son, Ethan. Especially not Ethan. At first, it wasn't intentional. I was grieving, lost, overwhelmed. But then something shifted. Subtle at first. Ethan started visiting more often. At first, I was grateful. A son checking on his widowed mother. That's what I told myself. But slowly, I began noticing things. The way his eyes lingered, not on me, but on the house. The furniture. The old paintings Daniel had collected. And then there was Claire, his wife. Always perfectly dressed. Always smiling just a little too carefully. She would sit beside me, hold my hand, and ask questions that sounded kind until you actually listened. Are you managing everything okay on your own? Have you thought about organizing your finances? Do you know where all your documents are? They never asked if I was lonely. They never asked if I missed Daniel. Only what I had. The moment everything changed happened 3 weeks ago. I wasn't supposed to hear them. They thought I was upstairs. But the house carries sound in strange ways, especially late at night. Their voices drifted up through the vents while I stood frozen in the hallway. She's sitting on more than she admits, Claire said. Ethan lowered his voice, but not enough. Dad wasn't stupid. There's definitely more. A pause. Then Claire again, colder this time. Well, she's not getting any younger. I don't know what hurt more, the words or how casually she said them. That was the moment something inside me snapped into place. Not anger, clarity. That night, I sat in Daniel's study, surrounded by his things, his books, his old watch, the faint smell of his cologne still clinging to the room. I thought about everything he had built. Everything he had trusted would protect me. And I asked myself one question. Do they love me, or are they just waiting? That's when the idea came. Not all at once. It grew slowly, like a shadow forming in the corner of a room. A test. If they believed I was dying, I would finally see the truth. The next few days were surreal. I researched illnesses, symptoms, timelines. I practiced my expression in the mirror, how to look tired, how to let my voice tremble just enough. I even called my doctor. I need a favor, I told him. There was a long silence after I explained. Catherine, I can't be part of something like this, he said carefully. I'm not asking you to lie, I replied. Just don't interfere. Another pause. Why are you doing this? I told him everything. When I finished, he sighed heavily. Be careful. Lies like this, they don't stay harmless. But by then, I had already decided. That same afternoon, I called Ethan. My hands were shaking more than I expected. Can you come over tonight? You and Claire. What's wrong? He asked immediately, but there was irritation under the concern. Just please come. They arrived exactly at 7. Of course they did. Claire checked her phone as she walked in. Ethan gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, distracted, already half somewhere else. We sat in the living room. I had prepared everything. Tissues on the table, dim lighting, even an old medical booklet placed just within view. I took a breath. I got some test results back today. Everything changed instantly. Claire straightened. Ethan leaned forward. "What kind of results?" he asked. I let the silence stretch. "I've been feeling off. Tired. Weak." I watched their faces carefully. They ran some tests. Another pause. Then I said it. "It's cancer." The word hung in the air like something physical. "Advanced," I added quietly. "Very advanced." Ethan's face went pale. Claire's fingers tightened around her ring. "How long?" he asked. I looked directly at him. 2 weeks. For a brief moment, I saw something real in his eyes. Shock, fear, maybe even grief. But then something else flickered behind it. Something colder. Claire was the first to speak. "Are you sure?" she asked quickly. "Did they confirm it properly?" "Not I'm sorry. Not we're here for you. Just verification." "Yes," I said softly. "Multiple tests." Ethan stood up and started pacing. "What about treatment? There has to be something." "They said it's too late." Claire was already thinking ahead. I could see it. Her voice shifted. Sharper. More focused. "Then we need to start planning." Planning. The word hit me like a slap. Planning. I repeated. "You know," she said gently, but not gently at all. "Arrangements. Legal things. Making sure everything is organized." It had been less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes. And we were already talking about my death, like it was a scheduled appointment. Ethan nodded slowly. "It's just being responsible, Mom. Dad would want that." There it was. Using Daniel. Always using him. I lowered my gaze, pretending to be overwhelmed. I haven't thought about that yet." "That's okay," Claire said quickly. "That's why we're here." I watched them exchange a glance. A silent understanding. And in that moment I knew I wasn't the only one hiding something. They stayed for another hour, talking gently, too gently, asking careful questions disguised as concern. About documents, accounts, where things were kept. When they finally left, the house fell silent again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one was alive. Charged. I walked slowly upstairs, past the old photos. Ethan as a child, smiling, laughing, holding my hand. I stopped in front of one. He couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Back when love was simple. Back when I never questioned it. That night, I opened Daniel's old laptop. I don't know why. Maybe instinct. Maybe something deeper. And that's when I found it. An email. Detailed. Precise. Every account. Every investment. Everything. And at the bottom, "Please forward this to Ethan. He should understand what Catherine will inherit." My hands went cold. He knew. For 2 years. He had known everything. And he never said a word. I closed the laptop slowly. The room felt different now. Smaller. Darker. My test had just begun. But already, I wasn't sure I was ready for the answers. I barely slept that night. Not because of guilt like I thought I might, but because my mind wouldn't stop replaying that email. Ethan had known everything. Every account, every dollar, every decision his father had made to secure my future, and he had kept silent for 2 years. Not once had he asked if I needed help. Not once had he offered to guide me through it. Instead, he watched, waited, calculated. By morning, whatever doubt I had about my plan was gone. This wasn't just a test anymore, it was protection. At 8:30 sharp, the doorbell rang. Too early. Too precise. I hadn't even changed out of my robe yet, which, in hindsight, worked perfectly. When I opened the door, Ethan and Claire stood there. But they weren't alone. A man in a dark, tailored suit stood slightly behind them, holding a leather briefcase like it was an extension of his arm. He looked polished, confident, the kind of man who knew exactly what to say before he said it. "Catherine," Ethan said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We didn't want you to be alone. Claire followed, already scanning the house with quiet familiarity. And this is Mr. Lawson, she added smoothly. He's an estate attorney. A very good one. Of course he was. Mr. Lawson stepped forward and extended his hand with a sympathetic smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm very sorry to hear about your condition, he said. Your family asked me to come by and help make things easier. Easier. That word again. I looked at Ethan. An attorney? I asked quietly. He avoided my eyes for just a second too long. We just thought, it's better to be prepared. Prepared. Less than 12 hours. It took them less than 12 hours to bring a lawyer into my home. I see, I said, stepping aside. Well, come in. They moved into the living room like they belonged there. Claire sat on the couch, crossing her legs elegantly. Ethan took his usual chair, his father's chair, without hesitation. Mr. Lawson placed his briefcase on the coffee table and opened it with calm precision. Papers, stacks of them, neatly organized. Ready. I've prepared a few standard documents, he began, laying them out one by one. Nothing binding yet, of course. Just a starting point. I didn't sit right away. I stood there, looking at the papers like they might bite. What kind of documents? I asked. Power of attorney, medical directives, a revised will structure, potential trust options, he listed smoothly, like he was discussing menu items. Revised will. The phrase echoed in my head. I didn't realize anything needed revising, I said carefully. Claire leaned forward, her tone soft but controlled. It's not that something is wrong. It's just things change. Situations evolve. Situations evolve. Such a clean way to say you're dying. So let's reorganize everything before you do. I finally sat down, slowly, deliberately. This feels very fast, I said. Mr. Lawson gave a small, understanding nod. I completely understand that it might feel overwhelming, but with a limited time frame, delays can create complications. The last thing we want is for your estate to go through probate unnecessarily. Ethan jumped in quickly. That can tie everything up for months, Mom. Maybe even years. Claire added, and it could freeze accounts, assets. It would make everything harder for everyone. Everyone. Not me. Not how I feel. Not what I want. Just everyone. I folded my hands in my lap, keeping my expression fragile, uncertain. I didn't realize anyone depended on me financially, I said quietly. That caught them. Just for a second. A flicker passed between Ethan and Claire, one of those silent exchanges I had started noticing more and more. Well, Claire said carefully, we're family. It affects all of us. Of course it does. Mr. Lawson slid one document closer to me. This is a medical power of attorney. It would allow your son to make decisions on your behalf if you're unable to. I looked at the paper, then at Ethan. What kind of decisions? I asked. Medical ones, he said quickly. Only if necessary. Mr. Lawson clarified. Treatment options, care decisions, life support considerations, standard protocol. Life support. The room felt colder. And this one? I asked, pointing to another document. A financial power of attorney, he said. It allows designated individuals to manage your assets, pay bills, make financial decisions in your best interest. In your best interest. I almost smiled. How thoughtful, I said softly. Claire leaned closer. We just want to make sure you don't have to worry about anything. That was the moment it became crystal clear. They weren't reacting. They were executing. This wasn't panic. This wasn't grief. This was a plan already waiting for the right moment. I think I'd like to speak to my own lawyer before signing anything, I said. The shift in the room was immediate, subtle, but sharp. Mr. Lawson's smile tightened. Of course, he said. Though I should mention, time is a factor here. There's always time for a second opinion, I replied. Claire's voice stayed calm, but I could hear the edge underneath. We're just trying to reduce your stress. And I appreciate that, I said, meeting her eyes. But I'm not ready to make decisions today. Ethan stood up and walked to the window, his back to us. Mom, he said, quieter now, are you sure your lawyer is up to date with things like this?
There was.
Undermining. Positioning. He's handled our family matters for 20 years, I said. Mr. Lawson adjusted his cuff slightly. Estate laws do change frequently. Outdated advice can cost beneficiaries significantly. Beneficiaries. Not me. I stood up. I need some time. That was the end of it. Or at least that's what I made it look like. They gathered their things, slower this time. Reluctant. Claire lingered near the mantel, her eyes scanning the room. Cataloging. Always cataloging. Do you have an inventory of your valuables? She asked casually. For insurance purposes? I almost laughed. Not formally, I said. You should, she replied. It's important. I'm sure it is. After they finally left, I didn't move for a long time. The house felt invaded. Not physically. Something deeper. Like I had just seen behind a curtain that was never meant to be pulled back. Then I did the one thing I should have done sooner. I called my lawyer. I need to see you today, I said. There was a pause. Catherine, is everything all right? No, I said honestly. It isn't. That afternoon, everything would start to change. But as I sat there, staring at the documents they had left behind, yes, left behind, like they expected me to study them, I realized something far more dangerous than their greed. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were preparing to take control before I even had the chance. And that meant one thing. My test wasn't just revealing the truth. It was triggering something much bigger. And I had just stepped directly into it. By the time I arrived at my lawyer's office that afternoon, I was no longer pretending to be fragile. At least not inside. On the outside, I still moved slower than usual, let my shoulders sag, kept my voice quieter than normal. But internally, something had hardened. The illusion was gone. Whatever denial I had been holding onto about Ethan had shattered the moment I saw those documents laid out on my coffee table like a prearranged transaction. This wasn't concern. It wasn't panic. It was strategy. And I needed someone grounded in reality to confirm that I wasn't imagining it. Mr. Hargrove had known me and Daniel for over 2 decades. He wasn't flashy, didn't speak in rehearsed sympathy, and most importantly, he never treated me like I didn't understand what was happening. When I walked into his office, he stood up immediately, concern written plainly across his face. Catherine, he said, guiding me into a chair. You sounded urgent on the phone. I need you to look at something, I replied, handing him the folder. He adjusted his glasses and began reading. Slowly, carefully. Unlike Mr. Lawson, who had presented everything like a sales pitch, Mr. Hargrove read like a man searching for problems, and it didn't take long before his expression changed. His jaw tightened. He flipped to the next page, then the next. When he finally looked up at me, the warmth in his eyes had been replaced with something else entirely. Where did you get these? He asked. My son brought them this morning, I said, with a lawyer. There was a pause. A lawyer they chose, he clarified. Yes. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. These documents, he said carefully, are extremely aggressive. Aggressive how? I asked, even though I already suspected the answer. The financial power of attorney alone would give your son nearly unrestricted access to your assets. He could move money, liquidate investments, even sell property legally on your behalf. He tapped the paper with his finger. And this clause here, it's written in a way that makes oversight very difficult. I felt something cold settle in my chest. And the medical one? I asked. That's even more concerning, he replied. It grants him authority to make end-of-life decisions, including refusal of treatment, placement in care facilities, and he hesitated for just a second, withdrawal of life-sustaining measures. The room went quiet. They could decide when I die, I said. Legally, he answered. If you sign this, yes. I let that sit between us. Then I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I told him everything. The conversation I overheard, the strange questions, the email I found, the fake diagnosis, the test. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react immediately. He just listened. And when I finished, he didn't laugh it off. He didn't say I was overreacting. Instead, he said something that made my blood run cold. I think you're underestimating the situation. I stared at him. What do you mean? He folded his hands on the desk. If what you're saying is accurate, and I believe it is, then this isn't just opportunistic behavior. This is coordinated,
Planned.
and possibly ongoing for much longer than you realize. A slow, uncomfortable realization crept in. You think they've been preparing for this? I think, he said carefully, they were waiting for the right moment. And your announcement gave them one. I swallowed. They're moving too fast, I said. It doesn't feel like panic.
It isn't, he replied.
It's execution. The word hit harder than I expected. Execution. Not grief. Not fear. A plan being carried out. There's something else, I said, my voice quieter now. They knew about the money. His eyes sharpened.
How?
I told him about the email, about Daniel sending everything to Ethan, about the silence that followed. Mr. Hargrove leaned back again, slower this time. That changes things, he said.
How?
It means your son has had 2 years to process that information. 2 years to form expectations. 2 years to, he paused, choosing his words carefully, build a narrative in his mind about what that money represents. And what does it represent? I asked. To him. He held my gaze. It may already feel like it's his. The room felt smaller, like the walls had moved in just a little. So, what do? I asked. First, he said firmly, you do not sign anything.
Not now.
Not later. Not ever, unless we go through it together. Of course. Second, he continued, we need to secure your assets. Immediately. What does that mean? It means restructuring ownership in a way that cannot be easily accessed, even with legal authority. Trusts. Protective barriers. Safeguards that prevent anyone from making unilateral decisions. And if they try anyway, they'll fail, he said. But more importantly, we'll have a record of the attempt. I nodded slowly. That made sense. But something still felt off. Mr. Hargrove, I said, do you think they would go further? He didn't answer right away. That alone told me enough. Further how? He asked. I hesitated, then said it. What if they don't want to wait? The silence that followed was heavier than anything else we had discussed. Finally he spoke. I'm not saying they would harm you directly, he said carefully. But in situations like this, neglect, pressure, manipulation, those can escalate, especially if there are financial motivations involved. Financial motivations. Yes, I whispered. There are. He studied me for a moment, then leaned forward slightly. Catherine, I'm going to suggest something you may not like. What? I think you should consider bringing in a professional. A professional? Someone who can observe, investigate, gather information. Quietly. It took me a second to understand. You mean a private investigator? Yes. I sat back. The idea sounded extreme, unreal, but then again, so did everything else happening. And what would they do? I asked. They would find out what your son and his wife are actually doing when you're not around, who they're speaking to, what they're planning, whether there are other people involved. Other people. That thought hadn't even crossed my mind. Until now. Do you really think it's that serious? I asked. He didn't hesitate this time. Yes. The certainty in his voice settled something inside me. Fear, yes. But also clarity. All right, I said quietly. Give me the contact. He handed me a card. A name. A number. Nothing flashy, which somehow made it feel more real. As I left his office, the world outside looked exactly the same. Cars moving, people walking, normal life continuing as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had shifted. This wasn't just a test anymore. This was a situation. A dangerous one. And when I got home, that feeling only deepened. Ethan's car was already in the driveway. I hadn't told him I was coming back yet. Inside, I found him in the kitchen, rearranging things. Again, Claire stood by the counter, organizing groceries I hadn't asked for. They both looked up at the same time. There you are, she said, smiling. We were worried. Worried. I almost admired how easily the word came to her. I was out, I said. You should have told us, Ethan added, his tone sharper than before. We need to know where you are. Need. Not want. Need. I looked at him. Really looked this time. And for the first time, I didn't see my son. I saw someone else. Someone who believed he was already in control. I didn't realize I needed permission, I said calmly. Claire stepped in quickly, smoothing the tension. No one said permission, she said lightly. We just care. Of course you do. Then Ethan said something that confirmed everything Mr. Hargrove had warned me about. We've been thinking, he said. It might be better if we stayed here for a while. Stayed, I repeated. Just temporarily, Claire added. To help you. Help me. Or watch me. Or control me. Or make sure nothing slipped out of their reach. I haven't agreed to that, I said. Ethan met my eyes. And this time there was no softness there. We're not really asking, he said. The room went completely still. And in that moment, the first Real crack appeared. Not in my plan. In my understanding. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. And I had a feeling they weren't planning to give it back. Something changed after that moment in the kitchen. It wasn't loud, not dramatic, but it was final. The line between us, whatever remained of it, was gone. Ethan didn't even try to soften what he had said. Claire didn't pretend anymore either. They had crossed into something else, something colder, more calculated, and I realized with unsettling clarity that I was no longer being asked about my own life. I was being managed. They started moving in that same day. Not officially, not with any discussion or agreement, but piece by piece, like water slowly filling a space until you realize there's no room left to stand. Claire brought in bags first. Toiletries, clothes, things that just made sense to have nearby. Ethan followed with larger items. A suitcase. A box of documents. Even a small appliance I had never seen before, which he placed on my kitchen counter as if it had always belonged there. By evening, the guest room no longer looked like mine. It looked like theirs. And they acted like it was normal. That was the part that unsettled me the most.
No confrontation. No announcement.
Just quiet replacement. You shouldn't be alone right now, Claire said at one point, as she rearranged my bathroom shelves without asking. It's safer this way. Safer. I didn't respond. I just watched her hands move through my things, touching objects that had belonged to me for years as if they were already hers. That night, I locked my bedroom door. I hadn't done that in decades. I told myself it was just precaution, just a reaction to stress. But deep down, I knew better. The next morning, I called the number Mr. Hargrove had given me. The man who answered didn't sound like I expected. His voice was calm, direct, almost casual, like nothing surprised him anymore. "This is Marcus Hale." "My name is Catherine," I said. "I was given your contact by Mr. Hargrove." There was a brief pause. "All right," he said. "Tell me what's going on."
So I did.
Everything.
The lie.
The documents. The behavior.
The shift.
When I finished, he didn't react immediately. "Okay," he said finally. "You did the right thing calling." Relief flickered through me, small but real. "You believe me?"
I asked.
"I've seen worse," he replied. "This fits a pattern." That word again.
Pattern.
"Can you help me?"
I asked.
"Yes," he said. "But we need to move carefully. And quickly." He explained the basics. Observation. Documentation. Evidence. Nothing illegal. Nothing reckless. But thorough. "I'll need access to the house when they're not there," he said. "And I'll need you to act exactly like you have been. Don't change anything. Even if they push?" "Especially then," he said. "People reveal the most when they think they're winning." Winning. That word settled uncomfortably in my chest. "When can you come?" I asked.
Tomorrow morning, he said.
"As soon as they leave." The next day couldn't come fast enough. But that evening things escalated. It started small. Claire brought out a pill organizer. One of those weekly boxes with compartments labeled by day. "I thought this might help," she said sweetly. "It's easy to forget things when you're not feeling well." "I don't forget my medication," I replied. "Of course you don't," she said quickly. "This is just to make it easier." Ethan stepped in behind her. "It's just practical, Mom. Practical. Always practical." "I prefer my system," I said. There was a pause. Then Claire smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "Sometimes," she said softly, "we don't always notice when we start slipping."
Slipping.
I felt it immediately.
The shift.
This wasn't about helping anymore. This was about building a narrative. "You left the front door unlocked yesterday," she added casually.
No, I didn't, I said.
"And you put milk in the pantry," Ethan said. "That's not true." Another glance between them.
Subtle. Quick.
But coordinated. "That's exactly what we're worried about," Claire said gently. "Gaslighting." The word hit me instantly. They were laying groundwork. Small things. Unprovable things. Things that could make me doubt myself. Or worse, make others doubt me. I didn't argue further. That would only feed it. Instead, I nodded slightly, like I was unsure. Let them believe it was working. That night, I checked my medicine cabinet. And that's when my stomach dropped. The bottles had been moved. Not dramatically. Just slightly. Enough that I noticed. And when I counted, a few pills were missing. Not many, but enough. Enough to mean something. My heart started beating faster. I gathered every bottle, every prescription, and took them downstairs. Daniel's safe was still there, exactly as he left it. I opened it with hands that weren't as steady as I wanted them to be, and placed everything inside. If they wanted control over my medication, they were going to have a problem. The next morning, Ethan and Claire left around 8:30. They said they had a meeting. Something about planning ahead. Of course they did. Marcus arrived 30 minutes later. He looked exactly like his voice sounded. Mid-50s, worn but sharp, observant in a way that made you feel like nothing escaped him. "You Catherine?" he asked. "Yes." He stepped inside and looked around once, quickly. "That didn't take long," he muttered. "What?" "They've already settled in," he said. "That's fast." I didn't respond, because I knew he was right. He got to work immediately. Small devices. Carefully placed. Living room.
Kitchen.
Guest room. Audio only, he explained. Voice activated. We're not breaking any laws. I nodded. It felt surreal. My home.
Bugged.
But also necessary. He handed me a small pendant. Wear this when they're around, he said. Backup recording. I took it. It felt heavier than it looked. Now, he said, sitting down, let's talk about them. He pulled out a folder. Your daughter-in-law, he began, has a history. My chest tightened. What kind of history? Financial, he said. Patterns of dependency on partners. Sudden gains.
Rapid losses.
I frowned. What does that mean? It means, he said calmly, she tends to attach herself to people with money. A chill ran through me. And Ethan? I asked. Marcus flipped a page. He's been making some questionable financial moves recently, he said.
Loans.
Large ones. How large? He looked at me. Large enough that they need to be repaid soon. The implication was immediate and heavy. So they're not just waiting, I said slowly.
No, Marcus replied.
They're on a timeline. A timeline, just like my 2 weeks. But theirs was real. I sat back in my chair. Everything was starting to connect. The pressure, the speed, the control. This wasn't just greed. This was urgency. What do we do? I asked. Marcus looked at me steadily. We let them keep going, he said. And we gather everything. Everything. Every word. Every move. Every mistake. I nodded slowly, because now I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. I wasn't just testing them anymore. I was exposing them. And judging by how quickly things were escalating, they weren't planning to wait for my 2 weeks to run out. By the 5th day of my 2 weeks, the house no longer felt like mine. It looked the same furniture, same photographs, same quiet corners filled with memories, but something underneath had shifted. Every movement felt watched, every word measured, every silence loaded. Ethan and Claire didn't even try to hide it anymore. They moved through the rooms like they belonged there, like they were already adjusting to life after me, not with me. And the worst part was how normal they made it seem. That was their strength, not force, not confrontation, but quiet control that wrapped itself around everything until resistance felt unreasonable. I wore the pendant Marcus had given me at all times now. At first, I was hyper-aware of it, constantly touching it, checking if it was still there. But after a day, it became part of me, like a silent witness hanging just beneath my collarbone, recording everything they said, everything they revealed when they thought I was weak, confused, and close to the end. Marcus had already reviewed the first recordings, and what he told me over the phone the night before still echoed in my head. They're not just talking about your money, he had said. They're talking about timing. That word again. Timing. Not if.
When.
And suddenly, my fake deadline didn't feel like something I controlled anymore. It felt like something they were trying to beat. That morning, Claire brought it up again. The pills. She stood in the kitchen, holding the organizer, her expression calm, almost patient, like she was dealing with a difficult child. I think it's time we start using this, she said. I leaned against the counter, letting my posture sag just slightly. I told you I'm fine managing it. For now, she replied. But things change quickly with your condition. There was no hesitation in her voice.
No discomfort.
She spoke about my decline like it was already happening. Ethan walked in behind her, coffee in hand. Mom, this isn't a debate, he said. It's just easier if we help. Easier for who? I didn't say that out loud. Instead, I let my shoulders drop a little more. All right, I said quietly, if it makes things easier. Claire smiled. A real one this time. Not warm. Satisfied. That was the moment Marcus had been waiting for. The plan was simple. He had come early that morning, before they woke up, and replaced my real medication with identical-looking placebos. Every bottle, every pill, harmless, safe, controlled. If they try anything, he had told me, we'll catch it. So when Claire sat at the kitchen table later, carefully sorting pills into the organizer, I watched every movement, every detail. She was meticulous. Too meticulous. She double-checked labels, counted doses, adjusted amounts. But then, just for a second, her hand paused. She glanced toward the hallway, toward where she thought I wasn't looking. And from her pocket she pulled something out.
Small.
Unlabeled. She hesitated, then added it to one of the compartments. Just one.
Quick. Precise.
If I hadn't been watching closely, I might have missed it. My stomach turned, but I didn't react. I couldn't. Done, she said cheerfully, sliding the organizer toward me. This will help keep everything consistent.
Consistent.
I nodded slowly. Thank you, I said. And for the first time since this started, I was truly afraid. That night, after they went to bed, I went downstairs and called Marcus. She added something. I whispered. I know, he said immediately. My heart skipped. You saw it. Clear as day, he replied. Audio picked up the packaging too. She unwrapped it before adding it. What was it? I asked. I don't know yet, he said. But it wasn't part of your prescriptions. A cold silence settled between us. They're escalating, he added. I know. Tomorrow, he said, you take one of those pills. In front of them. My grip tightened on the phone. Are you sure? It's a placebo, he said. You'll be fine. But we need to see how they react. I understood. It wasn't about the pill. It was about them. The next morning, I did exactly that. Claire was watching me closely. Too closely. Ethan pretended not to, but I could feel it. I opened the organizer, took one pill, swallowed it with water, and waited. Nothing happened, of course. But their reactions said everything. Claire leaned forward slightly. How do you feel? She asked.
Fine, I said.
A flicker of something crossed her face. Not relief. Disappointment. Ethan frowned. You sure? He asked. Yes. Another look between them.
Quicker this time. Tighter.
Something wasn't working the way they expected. And that was when I knew, without any doubt left, they weren't just preparing for my death. They were trying to control how it happened. Later that afternoon, things escalated again. Mom, Ethan said, sitting across from me, his tone more serious than usual. We need to talk about hospice. There it was. I kept my expression neutral. I'm not ready for that, I said. You don't have to be ready, Claire replied gently. It's just support. Support. I almost laughed. They specialize in cases like yours, she continued. Comfort care. Pain management. Pain management. Drugs. Strong ones. The kind that could mask anything. I don't think it's necessary yet, I said. Ethan leaned forward. You're not seeing this clearly, he said. Not seeing clearly. Another piece of the narrative.
Confusion. Decline.
Incompetence. They were building it step by step. I understand my situation, I replied calmly. Claire sighed softly, like she was the one dealing with something difficult. We're just trying to help you have a peaceful end, she said. A peaceful end. The words sent a chill through me, because now I understood something else. They weren't just impatient. They were preparing the story. A natural decline. A gentle passing. Nothing suspicious. Nothing sudden. That evening, I didn't eat the dinner they made. I'm not hungry, I said. You need to eat, Claire insisted. I'll eat later. She didn't like that. I could see it, because control was slipping, just slightly, and they could feel it. That night, Marcus called again. They're talking more openly now, he said, about what happens after. After what? He didn't answer immediately. You, he said finally. I closed my eyes. Anything specific?
I asked.
They're discussing the house. Selling it. Liquidating assets. Quickly.
Quickly.
Why quickly? Because your son, Marcus said, is in deeper trouble than I thought. My eyes opened. What do you mean? He owes money, Marcus said. A lot of it. And not to people who wait patiently. Everything clicked into place. The urgency, the pressure, the timeline. This wasn't just greed. It was desperation. So they need me to die, I said quietly. Yes, Marcus replied. Soon. I sat in silence for a long moment. Then I asked the question that had been building in my mind all day. Do you think they'd actually do it? Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes. That was the moment everything changed. Not externally, not visibly, but inside me. Because fear turned into something else. Something sharper, more focused. They thought they were controlling the situation. They thought I was weak,
Confused. Dying.
but they were wrong. And now, I wasn't just playing along anymore. I was waiting for the moment they went too far. By day 10, the air inside the house felt suffocating. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, something invisible pressing down on me every second I stayed under that roof with them. Every word Ethan spoke felt rehearsed. Every gesture Claire made felt calculated. There was no warmth left, no illusion even worth pretending to believe in. The only thing that remained was the act, and even that was starting to crack. I had stopped thinking of them as my family. That realization came quietly, without drama, sometime during the night before everything unraveled. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds from the guest room down the hall, their voices, low and indistinct. I didn't need to hear the words anymore. I already knew the tone. Controlled. Focused. Planning. Planning my end. Marcus had been calling me every evening with updates from the recordings. Each time, the conversations he described grew darker, more direct, less cautious. They weren't bothering to hide their intentions anymore. Not from each other. Only from me. They're discussing alternatives, he told me the night before. Different ways to or accelerate things. He didn't need to finish the sentence. I understood. And still, I stayed. Because we needed proof. Because stopping too early would mean they'd walk away clean. Because if I didn't see this through, they would just do it to someone else. That was the thought that kept me steady. Not anger. Not revenge.
Clarity.
At 6:10 that morning, my phone rang. I was already awake. Marcus. His name on the screen made something tighten in my chest. I answered immediately. Catherine, he said, his voice low, urgent. You need to leave the house.
Now.
Every nerve in my body went cold. What happened? I whispered. I intercepted a call, he said. Claire was speaking to someone. Not a doctor, someone posing as one. My heart started pounding. They're planning something this morning, he continued. Something fast. Something that will look natural. The room felt like it tilted. What kind of something? A cardiac event, he said. Induced. I gripped the edge of the bed. Today?
Yes.
Within the next couple of hours. I looked at the clock. 6:12. You need to get out, Marcus said. Go somewhere public. Somewhere with people. Cameras. Don't take anything. Just leave. My mind raced. They're upstairs, I said. Then you need to move quietly, he replied. I'm already calling the police, but you can't wait for them. I stood up, my legs unsteady, but moving. What if they see me? I asked. Then you stall, he said. But don't stay there. I hung up. Everything moved fast after that, but it didn't feel fast. It felt stretched, like time was dragging itself forward while my heart tried to outrun it. I grabbed my purse. My keys. Didn't bother changing. The back door was closer. I moved through the kitchen, every step careful, controlled. Almost there. My hand reached for the handle. Catherine. I froze. Claire's voice. Behind me. I turned slowly. She stood at the edge of the hallway, already dressed, already awake, already watching me. There was no softness left in her expression.
No pretense.
Just something cold, sharp, awake. Going somewhere? She asked. My heart was hammering, but I forced my voice to stay steady. I couldn't sleep, I said. I wanted some air. In your nightgown? She asked, tilting her head slightly. Her eyes flicked down to my hand. The keys. Then back to my face. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Dangerous. Then she stepped closer. Slowly. And that's when I saw it. In her hand. A syringe. Small. Clear. Precise. My breath caught. What are you doing? I asked. But I already knew. She smiled. Not the polite smile she wore for days. Not the controlled one. This one was different. Real. That depends, she said calmly, on how difficult you want to make this. The words didn't sound rushed. Or angry. They sounded practiced. Like she had been waiting for this moment. My back pressed lightly against the counter behind me. Claire, I said, you don't have to do this. She laughed softly. Oh, Catherine, she said, we passed that point days ago. We. Where's Ethan? I asked. Upstairs, she replied. Getting ready. For what? She smiled again. For after. After. The word hit harder than anything else. This will be quick, she continued, lifting the syringe slightly. It'll look natural, peaceful, exactly what everyone expects. Everyone expects. They had built the story so well. The diagnosis, the decline, the concern. No one would question it. You've done this before, I said. Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. Then she shrugged slightly. Let's just say I've learned what works. Cold. Detached. No hesitation. Why? I asked. Because, she said simply, you're in the way. The honesty was almost shocking. No one was supposed to get hurt, she added lightly. But you made it complicated. I glanced toward the front of the house. No sound. No sirens yet. Too quiet. Too slow. I needed time. Ethan knows? I asked. She nodded. Of course he does. That hurt more than anything else. Not the threat. Not the syringe. That. He agreed to this? I asked. He needs this, she said. And you're expendable. Expendable. I felt something shift inside me then. Not fear. Something else. Something steady. Because in that moment, I stopped hoping this wasn't real, and started accepting that it was. The sirens hit just seconds later, distant at first, then closer. Claire's expression changed. Not panic. Calculation. She stepped forward. Fast. The syringe raised. This ends now, she said. But I was ready. Not stronger. Not faster. But ready. My hand closed around the nearest thing I could grab, the coffee pot. Still half full. Hot. I swung. Hard. It connected with her wrist. Glass shattered. She screamed. The syringe fell. Coffee splashed across both of us. She lunged again. But this time, the front door burst open. Shouts. Movement. Police. Everything happened at once. Hands grabbing her. Voices shouting. Commands. Noise filling the house that had been so quiet just moments before. And just like that, it was over. Or at least the part where I had to pretend. As they pulled her away, she didn't look scared. She looked angry, like something had been taken from her. Upstairs, they found Ethan. Dressed. Prepared. Waiting. Not confused. Not surprised. Just caught. And as they brought him down, our eyes met for a brief second. I searched for something. Anything.
Regret. Guilt. Shame.
But there was nothing. Only one thing left. Resentment. Like I had ruined something he believed was already his. That was the moment I understood completely. Not just what they had planned, but who they really were. And more importantly,
Who I was to them.
the house was unrecognizable by the time the sun fully rose. Not because anything had physically changed, at least not at first glance, but because the illusion that had held it together for years was completely gone. Police moved through each room with quiet efficiency, marking, photographing, collecting. The same living room where I had sat just days ago pretending to be weak now held evidence markers. The kitchen, where Claire had stood smiling while organizing my medication, was now a crime scene. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold instead of standing in the middle of my own. I sat at the dining table wrapped in a blanket someone had handed me. I hadn't even noticed when it was placed over my shoulders. My hands were still trembling slightly, not from fear anymore, but from the aftermath of it. That strange, hollow calm that comes after something almost breaks you. Marcus arrived not long after the police secured the house. He didn't rush toward me, didn't ask unnecessary questions. He just nodded once, like we both understood exactly what had happened without needing to say it out loud. "You did exactly what you needed to do," he said quietly. I looked at him. "I almost didn't make it," I replied.
But you did, he said.
And somehow that mattered. A paramedic checked my arms where the hot coffee had splashed earlier. Minor burns. Nothing serious. It almost felt ironic. After everything that had nearly happened, the only physical injury I walked away with was from my own defense. Ethan was taken out of the house in handcuffs about 20 minutes later. I watched from the doorway. I didn't plan to. I didn't even want to. But I couldn't stop myself. He looked different. Not like my son. Not like the boy I raised. He didn't look broken. He didn't look ashamed. He looked irritated, like someone whose plans had been interrupted. For a moment, he glanced toward me. Our eyes met, and just like that, any last piece of denial I had left disappeared. There was nothing there.
No apology. No regret.
Just distance. They put him in the car, closed the door, and that was it. Claire followed shortly after, her wrist bandaged, her expression unreadable. If anything, she looked more composed than anyone else in that moment. As they led her past me, she didn't speak. She didn't need to. There was something in the way she held herself, like this wasn't the end of her story, just an inconvenience. Maybe for her it wasn't, but for me,
It was the end of something.
a few hours later, the house was quieter again. Not the same silence as before. This one felt empty, clean in a strange way, like something toxic had finally been removed. I sat in the living room, the same place where I had first told them I was dying. The irony didn't escape me. I had lied about death, and almost lost my life because of it. Mr. Hargrove arrived around noon. He spoke with the officers first, then came to sit across from me. His expression was serious, but not surprised. "They're going to be charged with multiple offenses," he said. "Attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, possibly more once everything is processed." I nodded slowly. It felt distant, like he was describing something happening to someone else. "And the evidence?" I asked. "Strong," he replied. "The recordings, the setup, the intent, it's all there." Marcus had done his job. We had done our job. "They won't walk away from this," he added. Good. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I understood something now. If they could do this to me, they could do it to anyone. "And the money?" he asked after a pause. I looked at him. "What about it?" "You'll need to decide what happens next. your estate, your assets, everything. I leaned back in the chair. For the first time in days, I let myself breathe fully. The tension, the fear, the constant awareness. It was gone, replaced by something quieter.
Clarity.
I'm not leaving it to him, I said. There was no hesitation. No doubt. Mr. Hargrove nodded. I didn't think you would. Over the next few weeks, everything moved quickly. Statements, interviews, legal processes. It was exhausting, but it was real. No more pretending. No more acting. Just truth. And in that truth, I started to rebuild something I hadn't realized I had lost. Myself. 3 months later, I stood in a place that felt completely different from where this all began. A small office.
Bright.
Alive. People moving with purpose. Helping. Building. The Catherine Foundation. I had kept enough to live comfortably, more than comfortably if I was honest. But the rest, I couldn't keep it sitting there anymore, waiting to be fought over, corrupted, turned into something ugly. Daniel had spent his life building that money.
Carefully.
Patiently. Not for it to become a motive for destruction.
But for it to mean something.
Now it did. Scholarships. Support programs. Opportunities for people who actually needed them. Real lives. Real impact. Not greed. Not desperation. Something good. Something clean. I walked through the office slowly, listening to the quiet hum of people working. Papers, conversations, plans, everything moving forward instead of circling around fear and control. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Not happy. Not entirely. Some things don't come back that easily. I still thought about Ethan, about the boy he used to be, about where it all went wrong. Those questions didn't have answers, and maybe they never would. But I had stopped asking them, because the truth was already clear. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by intention, by care, by whether someone wants you to live, or is simply waiting for you to die. That night, I returned home. My home. The locks had been changed. The guest room was empty again. I turned it into a library. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere safe. I sat in Daniel's chair, just like I used to. But it felt different now. Not like I was holding on to something that was gone, but like I had finally let it rest. The test I created had cost me something. It had stripped away illusions I didn't even realize I was still holding on to. But it had also given me something back.
Control. Clarity.
Freedom. I was 70 years old,
Alive.
and finally, not surrounded by people pretending to care, but standing completely on my own. And for the first time since Daniel died, that didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like strength. The story people would hear would be simple. A woman survived. A crime stopped. Justice served. But the real story, the one that mattered, was quieter than that. It was about seeing the truth, accepting it, and choosing what to do with what remained. I chose to live, and that was something no one would ever take from me again.